Welcome to this week's episode of Wedding Crashers University. My name's Jack Thomas, and today we'll be starting our series on the 3 keys of cinematic storytelling. These keys will step up your shooting game instantly and allow you to get amazing shots every time. In this episode, we're going to be talking about lighting. Who turned off the lights? Of all the keys we could be talking about, we chose to discuss lighting first. It is honestly something that can make or break a great film. Not only will lighting give you a cleaner image, but it can also be used as a great storytelling tool. This episode will be showing you how to use lighting to create some amazing wedding films. Although wedding days can be fast-paced, it's still important to take some time to think about lighting for your scenes. By moving your subject to a more ideal location or even setting up a light, you can create a much more dynamic shot and give your film a high-end production look. We use different lighting techniques throughout the entire wedding day. And it is something to always keep in mind to create the best image for your film. Every wedding day is different, and usually the locations are out of your control.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a tutorial on how to set up for one of the most complicated ceremony setups I've ever seen in my entire life.
However, there are some practical tricks we use at virtually every wedding to get beautiful images every time. It's important to note how different lighting can impact the feel of your footage. For example, shooting on the shadow side or as a silhouette will give your shots a more dramatic look. Harsh lighting can also be used to create dynamic shadows for an artistic effect. Try to think about how every shot could be used in your final film. Ben is here to show us how he uses lighting to make his films stand out.
What is up, guys? It's Ben from Wedding Crashers University. Today, we're gonna be talking about a few of the lighting scenarios that you're likely to happen across on a wedding day. The first of those scenarios is going to be during prep. Now, during prep, you're probably gonna walk into a room and there's gonna be a lot of people in a very small space just like trying to get ready. Now, it's your job as a videographer to try to find the best lighting within that room, and here are a few of the things that we like to do to make sure that the footage that comes out of that scenario looks as clean as possible. So, one of the most surefire techniques to getting good-looking lighting, no matter where you are for prep, is finding a big window. Now, you can do this for the bride getting on her dress. You can do this for the groom putting his suit on. For almost any scenario, you should be able to find a big window, and what you're gonna wanna do is put your subject right in front of it. Now, if we look through the viewfinder, you'll see that this footage is already looking pretty good, and all we did was just put our subject in front of a window. You can see there's kind of a soft roll off there. It's very natural looking lighting, and it also gives you a very contrasty, sort of emotional look. Now, one of the things that you're gonna wanna keep in mind when you're doing this type of technique is that usually where you are, there's gonna be some type of ambient lighting within the room. Whether it's like a lamp on a table or some overhead lights, you're gonna wanna make sure that those are off when you're recording a situation like this. And the reason for that is the color temperature of the light outside is most likely going to be different than the lighting that you have inside the room. So in order to avoid competing color temperatures and kind of lean into that contrasty look, you're gonna wanna make sure that all the lights inside the room you're shooting are cut before you start shooting in front of the window. The second lighting scenario you're likely to find yourself in is one in the great outdoors, like we are here today. Whether your venue is in the mountains, whether it's in the forest, whether it's in a field, whether you're in a city, you're probably gonna be shooting outside at some point during the day, and there are a few keys to keep in mind to make sure that your footage is always looking nice. Now here we have a situation where it's very bright outside. There's not a lot of clouds in the sky, so what we're gonna wanna do is take our subject and make sure that they are in a shadowed condition. So, if you're out in a field, try to find a tree somewhere. If you're out in the city, try to go behind a building, somewhere where the sunlight isn't as direct. And as we can see on our subject, that puts us shooting him in a very sort of soft lighting condition where nothing is too harsh on his face, he doesn't have to squint, and it makes our image look significantly more clean. Now, if you're in a situation where you cannot find shade, for whatever reason, it is important to try to shoot opposite the sun, especially during golden hour. If you're shooting at golden hour, the sun is very low in the sky, it's very harsh on your subject, there's a lot of deep shadows, and it's important to try to keep your subject opposite the sun. If you can manage to shoot with your couples at golden hour, and this is usually the hour right before sunset, that's gonna give you some beautiful light to play with that's heavily contrasted. You got a lot of oranges, and all in all throughout the day, it definitely is the best lighting condition to shoot in. So as you're scheduling the day with your couple, make sure you bring up the fact that shooting at golden hour will produce images that look extra creamy. In this section, we'll be talking about reception lighting and what the best practices are for lighting things like speeches and dances. Today, we have our lovely subjects, Tilly, standing here. Standing in as our speaker stand, we have this light stand. When you're setting up for reception, one of the first things that you'll experience is the grand march shortly after, followed by dinner and speeches. So this is one of the first things that you're gonna wanna light for, and typically we'll do this sometime during cocktail hour. And one of the things we like to do is make sure that when the speaker is speaking, they're standing at a mic stand. And the reason that we do this is so that we know exactly where they're gonna be standing the entire time. Sometimes you'll find it where there's like a big head table and people will just stand wherever they were sitting and they'll give their speech, or they might be sitting at tables around the venue and they'll stand and give their speech from their table. This is not something that we typically enjoy shooting just because it's hard for us to light and find our camera positioning for those particular scenarios. So if it's possible, check with the DJ, see if they have a mic stand that you would be able to borrow for speeches, and then just let everybody who's speaking know that they should be speaking from the mic stand and not necessarily moving around. With all that said, let's jump into what our typical lighting setup looks like for speeches. As you're shooting these speeches, you will probably have a few cameras set up, but today we're gonna be talking about the main camera. This camera has a 70-200 on it, and it's pointed directly at our speaker, and it will be rolling for the entire time. So this camera is the one that we're gonna be lighting for. Now let's jump into what our lighting setup actually looks like and the difference it makes on our subject, Tilly. One of the things to keep in mind when you're setting up for your reception lighting is that it's always best to shoot from the shadow side. So whatever side your lights are on, your camera, you're gonna want it on the opposite side, especially if you're going for more of that dramatic, more contrasty feel. So that is exactly what we did here today. So we're always gonna wanna set up two lights for reception, whether this be the speeches or the dances. And one of the lights you're gonna set up is your key light. Now, the key light is typically the light that's coming more from the front. It's hitting your subject about 5 times harder than your hair light is. And so this is the one we have set up here. Our main speaker camera is right over here. And so this is sort of hitting her. As I turn it on, you can see, it sort of hits her face, but it kind of leaves her cheek a little bit shadowed as well. It kind of hits the side of her face. Our camera is shooting the shadow side, as you can see. And this is an example of great key lighting. As you can tell, it's relatively intense. It lights up our subject. It breaks her away from the background, and it really makes your focus it pulls your focus towards the subject. Our key light is gonna be about 5 times stronger than our hair light. Now let me go turn that on and let me show you what exactly the hair light does to our image. Okay, so that hair light will kind of almost outline our subject and make them stand out against a darker background, which is exactly what we're going for. It's a beautiful image, and this is a perfect example of how to light for speeches. This is our go-to setup for not only the speeches, but for dances, for the cake cutting, for almost the entire reception. This 2 lighting setup is just a hammer in the toolkit of a filmmaker. And as soon as you master it, you'll be able to kind of use these in more situations than you can even imagine. And it will help your image look clean and sharp and dramatic, and should help you increase the quality of your films quite significantly.
The last thing we will talk about is the lights that we use on a wedding day. Here we have the Aperture 60X. We have been using these lights for the past couple years, and they are phenomenal for wedding receptions. It can light across large reception halls and can adjust white balance to match the room. It has a spotlight fill light dial that can be adjusted based off your situation. The light weighs about 5.5 pounds, which makes it great for portable travel. For wireless power, you can use V-mount batteries, which makes these very flexible to use in situations where power may be difficult to get to.
Start blinding people.
Check out, we still got 3 hours, bro. This is the ultimate hack, guys. Buy yourself a V-mount battery. Stop complaining about the crazy price point because they are crazy useful. Zing!
Overall, these lights are amazing and we highly recommend them. These lights cost $419 and you'll also need to purchase light stands separately. There are a lot of different options for light stands. We use the Manfrotto Alumaster 12-foot stands that work great. We bring 2 of these to every wedding and typically only use them for reception. This allows us to have a key light and a hair light for grand entrances, speeches, dances, and other important moments throughout the night. With these lights, be cautious of blinding guests. These lights are powerful and bright, and sometimes we get complaints. Try to turn them off before dinner and only use them while filming. Other lights we have recently started using at weddings is the Aperture MC. These are small and portable, but also have a ton of features. They feature variable color temperature and change colors with the RGB, and can be easily rechargeable with USB-C. We often use these for detail shots during prep, or sometimes to light the couple during speeches. They're really fun to get creative with, and the cost of this light is currently $90. We'll include a link to both of these lights and the stands in the description below. And that's a wrap for our keys to cinematic lighting. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you can apply some of these lighting techniques and tools to create more compelling love stories. Lighting is an art and a skill that does take time, but continue to practice and I promise you, you will notice a dramatic shift in the quality of your work. Effective lighting will really make your films stand out. Next episode, we will be discussing the next key, which is telling a story through your shots. We'll be teaching you how to direct and shoot sequences to make it look like you had many cameras on set, even though it might just be you. You don't want to miss it, so make sure you subscribe, and we will see you next time on Wedding Crashers University.